So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Lavin from Bloomberg Philanthropies, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's local infrastructure hub session that we developed in collaboration with our partners at Results for America and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Local Infrastructure Hub is a national program that connects cities and towns with the resources and expert advice they need to access federal infrastructure funding in order to drive local progress, improve communities, and deliver results for residents. We've been doing this now for 3 years since the Investment Infrastructure Jobs Act was passed. And so we've just been thrilled to work with thousands of communities all over this country to learn about your priorities and to hopefully help you tailor your projects and your applications to be able to take advantage of this historic funding. Through this program, cities and town leaders have had access to hands-on grant application training, funding, hands-on one-on-one office hours, and other resources. We're continuing to offer those. And so at the end of today's session and throughout today's session, we're going to be sharing links. We have boot camps happening right now on the Safe Streets program. We have workshops on grant implementation. So if you've won a grant and you want to figure out what are the next steps to take, we can help guide you through that. And we have a website with lots of resources from past sessions that we've had. So we want to make sure that people know there's still money available for cities, how to take advantage of it, and make sure that you're putting it to great use. Today's session is going to focus on the Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development program, which is otherwise known as BUILD. USDOT published the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the BUILD program in December, and applications are due on February 24th. So a little over a month to work on your applications. We're going to outline key elements of the NOFO, highlight successful projects, and ensure you have the information you need to develop a competitive application. We know what we know about the BUILD, or before it, the RAISE program, and before that, the TIGER program, is that cities often have to apply 2, 3, 5, or I think I've heard, a city that told me it was their seventh try that they finally got the funding. So if you have applied before and you haven't been successful, we're going to encourage you to keep working on it. Hopefully the information that we share today, and I know the tips that our experts in cities have on the line will share, will hopefully help you to move that project forward towards getting it funded. Today, we have the great fortune of being joined by Christopher Coase, the Executive Director of America Forward and former Acting Undersecretary of Transportation of Transportation Policy at USDOT. In that role, Christopher joined us on many sessions of the Local Infrastructure Hub to unpack complex grant programs and give city leaders the expertise and resources you needed to take advantage of this funding. Christopher, just want to say a huge thank you for once again joining us and sharing your wisdom. And I'm going to pass the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you to the National Good Cities and Bloomberg for hosting this important conversation. I can tell you, in my 4 years in the Biden-Harris administration, I could always count on National Good Cities and Bloomberg to make sure that the applicants were not only well educated, but also I can tell when those applications came in because they generally were the best prepared. So again, really appreciate this opportunity. We'll go to the next slide. As Jamie pointed out, I did spend the last 4 years in the Department of Transportation, first as Assistant Secretary and then later as the Acting Undersecretary. That's a lot of words to basically say. I had the unique opportunity to not only set up, but also manage a number of our discretionary grants, including what is now known as the BUILD program. And I know there's going to be a lot of terms, so I'm going to just make sure folks are aware. If we go to the next slide, BUILD is actually the multimodal discretionary grant program. This program was created initially, as Jamie pointed out, known as TIGER, as part of the American Recovery and Investment Act of 2009. And again, that was actually designed for, again, multimodal, so roadways, rail, port, as well as highway freight and airports, was actually in that time really looking for projects that were shovel ready. But that grew over time to really support really local driven projects. As Jamie pointed out, every administration comes in and puts their spin on it. Obviously, in the Biden-Harris administration, we call it the RAISE program, Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. The Trump administration, both Trump 1 and now in the second term, has called it the BUILD program, Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. A couple of things here. What is different in this for this program that, unlike the years of Tiger, this program was finally authorized. Traditionally, this was an annual appropriation program. Due to the infrastructure bill that was passed during the Biden-Harris administration, it was actually authorized. So right now, with the current proposal of FY26, there's $1.5 billion available. Right now, Congress is debating an adding additional $145 million. But what's the most important thing about the authorization, which we go to the next slide, is that there are actually specific merit criteria that is consistent across the board. A couple of things that you should know. As part of your application, every applicant has to meet federal requirements, whether that's NEPA process, civil rights, labor standards. But if you have a project that is looking, let's say, on the capital side of the ledger versus a planning, you have to do what is called a benefit cost analysis as part of your project. All projects, particularly on the capital side, require a local share unless you are in a historically disadvantaged or area of persistent poverty. We'll go to the next slide. One of the things, again, as I mentioned before, this is a multimodal program, but what is really great about this program is the ability for local governments to really tackle some of those local projects. One of the things that I want to leave here before I turn it over to our panel is some of the things that I learned while I was in the administration that I think might be fruitful for you. Of course, during the Biden-Harris administration, we were very interested in not only local projects that demonstrated safety outcomes, but also decarbonization and ways to include communities. But every administration has their own emphasis. This round of BUILD, one of the things that Secretary Duffy has made very clear is that safety is number one. So projects that are looking to reduce either roadway deaths, that includes those in vehicles, but also pedestrians, is a key priority. Second priority that Secretary Duffy has made for this round of grants is around state of good repair. That is, of course, that for local governments, you oftentimes know how hard it is to get state formula dollars to do things like bridge repair, as well as even local streets. For those streets that need those potholes filled, this is a great program for that. But also, one of the things that makes this program very attractive is that it's not just your traditional roads and bridges, but projects that might include your ports. Is also a eligible component of this program, as well as airport infrastructure that are connected to the surface transportation. If we go to the next slide. I'm just highlighting two projects here that have been funded over the years to show consistency. In FY13, in Atlanta, where I am based in Southwest Georgia, the Atlanta project was along the Beltline, a $18 million trail. But also in the Port of Alaska, received $19 million in bill funding to support aging port facilities. I'm flagging this because one of the things that Secretary Duffy has emphasized is the importance of fixing existing infrastructure, building new capacity, whether it's new interchanges, new roadway capacity, but also improving the family experience. And so as you are thinking about your projects, please make sure that you're emphasizing one of those key themes. Is it safe? Does it improve mobility and connectivity? Is it improving and enhancing the current right-of-way, whether it's a road right-of-way, whether it's a transit right-of-way? I'll go to the next slide. One of the things that we learned for all of our applicants is that we wanted to make sure that people submitted really good applications. As it was noted, when we actually do the process, when you submit those applications, we are looking at the various merit criteria that are now statutorily ingrained. We want to know, did you answer each of the criteria? even though your project might be a safety project or maybe a quality of life project, the application, to be a successful application, your application has to address all of the criteria. And so to help facilitate better applications, I just want to make sure folks are aware that right now on the DOT website, there is a actual checklist that every applicant, when you submit, before you submit, you should actually go through to make sure that you cover. So with that, I know we're going to have a very robust discussion today with our panelists. I'm looking forward to answering any inside the agency answers. But the most important thing here is this is a great opportunity to get local multimodal projects that will either improve safety, expand capacity, and improve the traveling experience. If you have that application, you will be successful. With that, I turn it back over to you, Jamie, and looking forward to the panel discussion.
Here, what's up?
Great, Christopher. Thank you so much. Really, really helpful. We got a question already in the chat that I think others might have as well. And it's about whether funding to implement recommended traffic calming actions to improve pedestrian and vehicle safety would be an eligible grant. And maybe I'll just put a little spin on this because I know that there's certain kinds of traffic calming measures that that cities have been thinking about and worry that this administration might have said would be disfavored if they eliminate a lane, for instance. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
No, that's a really great question. So in the last round of funding that came out, the administration was very open to certain transportation calming assets, like roundabouts, for example. We did see a number of those investments. Now, one of the areas where the administration will have pause is conversations around road diets, specifically. Now, one of the things I would say there, while road diets is a proven measure of reducing roadway fatalities, the question here is how you tell the story. So while I may not recommend you saying road diet specifically, it might be right sizing the right of way. I think many times we've seen, particularly some of the grants that got restructured as part of the administration review, projects still move forward that still reduce lane, but actually was able to tell a better story in terms of economic development, as well as additional throughputs for all users of the system. So as long as you stay within that realm, and not actually create a message that you're against cars specifically, you should be in a good space. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, no, I just want to underline that. One of the examples I often tell is when you think about in New York City, where I live, we under the Bloomberg administration, we pedestrianized Broadway all around Times Square. And the concern was that that was going to create all sorts of traffic. And there were some demonstration projects that showed taxis actually moved much faster after those roads were closed. So think about how you can tell the story that Christopher's talking about, how you can show it's actually going to improve vehicle access. Even doing something where, on first blush, it might look like that's the goal or the outcome that would happen. Great. Well, I encourage everyone to keep putting questions in the chat. I noticed you also talked, Christopher, about improving family experience. And we saw, especially in the Safe Streets program, an emphasis on thinking about families. A lot of cities, I think, applied for projects that were around schools or, areas where there were sidewalks that weren't happening and students couldn't get safely around. Could you speak to the maybe some other types of projects where that family experience element would help a project be competitive? And I'll just maybe remind our other participants to be on mute if you're not a panelist.
That's a really great question. I mean, listen, one of the things that we have all since kind of taken for granted is the idea of curb cuts. Normally we would think, okay, this was an attempt to be responsive to the American Disability Act, but if any mother with kids and a stroller know that those curb cuts actually is beneficial to them. That is just one example. Another example is making connections to airports, making the ability for a family to be able to have direct access to an airport. Oftentimes that's a transit improvement. Either bringing new bus systems into a terminal to let it be easier for a family to bring their kids in is another example. The key thing here is the idea of how does the asset, the facility itself, benefit everyone. And to Jamie, I thought the example you gave was an amazing one. One of the projects that we were excited about was how much dollars we were able to give to localities who are trying to improve the ability for children to walk and bike to school. With their parents or not. And so those are just a couple of examples that was improving the customer experience, getting to the airport, or even as something as simple as building better walking infrastructure for children getting to school as two great examples.
Yeah, and I'll just underline when Christopher talks about the airport example, I would just, think about how you tell that narrative from an affordability perspective, right? You think about what transit from an airport can look like for a family, and how could you build in the affordability agenda into your project. Great. Well, this is super helpful. I know we're going to continue getting more and more questions. Keep them coming. We're going to highlight a few projects that got funding, and bring Christopher back in to offer some perspectives as we go along. So I'm going to welcome into the conversation Mayor Arsenault of Shreveport, Louisiana. Katie Moore, the Special Projects Manager from the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects from Cleveland, Ohio, Mayor Bibb's office, Lynn McHale, the Project Coordinator, and Sal Porzio, Project Manager from Waterbury, Connecticut. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're excited to talk about your projects. And so maybe I'll start with you, Mayor Arsenault, if it's okay. Could you just tell us a little bit about the different activities that Shreveport's been taking since you were awarded the RAISE grant back in 2022?
Yeah, this is a huge grant for us. It's $22 million with a roughly $5 million local match, which we've been able to do. The State Department of Transportation is actually managing this grant for us, and it is in design now. The design period is scheduled to go through the end of this year. Construction should start in 27. Part of this process is some rapid transit to facilitate. Our grant runs basically between two hospitals and past a third one, and it's a very congested area of our city. It's an old roadway called Kings Highway, and this is basically designed. It really has a tremendous safety impact, particularly across from on the eastern end of this 1.6 mile stretch is the LSU Health, which is it is a charity hospital, but it's also a branch of the medical school for LSU, and the park all of the parking for the hospital is across Kings Highway or across another 4-lane street, Linwood Avenue, from the hospital. So one of the major things that we wanted to consider was how can we reduce the traffic and improve pedestrian crossing of this highway, because it's a very busy street. It runs between I-20 and I-49, so there's lots of traffic. It's an older road, so it has narrow lanes. The telephone poles, utility poles are right next to the right of way, so there are a lot of issues there that what we're trying to do is to move the utilities underground and also create a place where we could shuttle buses between the various sites that are on that $1.6 million, 1.6 miles. And there's also involved is a pedestrian crossway, an elevated pedestrian crossway, so that they don't actually have to get in the road. As you might guess, if you have 200 or more people an hour crossing a 4-lane road, they don't always wait for the crosswalk. So it is pretty dangerous for pedestrians, and at particular times, shift changes and that kind of thing, it really is pretty dangerous. So The project involves redoing the roadway, putting utilities underground, and then building a small transportation hub within these various medical facilities, so that the people will be able to park and ride instead of just driving from location to location. So that's kind of a summary. We had tremendous support from the stakeholders, the hospitals, the people that would really be affected by this. They were making significant capital investments at the same time, and I think that that's what did it. I do have to give a disclaimer. This was done under my predecessor. It was a great application. I did review it so that I could be cognizant with you, but I think they did a super job. For lack of a better term, our transportation director, which is our mass transit person, is actually a franchisee of the city. We contract with them to run our transit system, but we treat Dinero Washington like he's a department head, and he is simply the very best at these kinds of things. So if I were guessing how we got this, I would say between Patty Dubois, who's a grant writer here, and Dinero, they just put together a great application with a great idea.
Well, thank you, Mary. You hit on so many points that I want to follow up on. But a few I'll just underline. One is just, that part about making sure, and I saw a question in the chat about whether we should include residents and their desires for this project in an application. And I think there's a strong yes, right? Like think about
Yes.
who are those stakeholders whose voices you could be bringing up. I think especially as you talked about, this is, the community that supports the health infrastructure. So making sure them, and then talking about leverage, right? How can you leverage this money with other investments that are happening? And I think that's particularly important, as Christopher said, in this administration's priorities. They're looking for that it's not just going to be federal dollars, but it's going to be riding alongside of private money.
Yeah,
And
there are
then
really
thank you. Yeah.
three of those. First of all, the medical school built a new medical school facility that was within this corridor. It's now called BRF, but it formerly was the Biomedical Research Foundation. It built a new facility in this corridor, and it had an older facility that it was enhancing. So there was a lot of ancillary activity to go on to both justify the grant and to show that there would be some ancillary investment related to it.
That's so great. And thanks also for shouting out the team in Shreveport, especially your grant writer, because we know what a difference that they make. I'm gonna move over to you next, Katie, to talk about what's happening in Cleveland. And you received a $960,000 planning grant. Wanted to talk to you about the plans and the activities for the project and why multimodal access is an important component for your transportation priorities.
Thank you. And thank you for highlighting our project on this panel. We are thrilled to be here talking about our planning grant. So we submitted a planning grant for our multimodal hub, which you can think of as a transit center, transportation center more generally. We decided to focus on this particular element for build because we have a much larger project that we are delivering called the North Coast Connector project. And this is a single element within a much larger lakefront transformation that is going on here in Cleveland right now. We have already secured a number of other grants for the construction, reconstruction of a long stretch of local highway that separates the city from our lake. And one thing that we noticed is we are going to do something about that highway, but really access is the issue. So bringing in this multimodal hub and making sure that we're ready to deliver that with this project became very important. So we went into build with a very clear idea that we wanted it not just to be about the change of the boulevard and the view the view for cars and people from downtown, but we also wanted to make sure that we thought about access and efficiency and direct connection for folks coming in within our regional rail system, our regional transit system with GCRTA, which is Cleveland's kind of countywide transit system. And also we have a lakefront Amtrak station that has been sitting and in much need of attention. We've had 40 years of plans that describe what is possible for a transit center on our lakefront, and we haven't been able to deliver it yet. We put in our waterfront line for GCRTA, which is a light rail, right next to our Amtrak station. So it's almost like the table is set and we just needed a little bit of extra money and attention to this element of the project. So we saw build, we saw that it was a good fit for that activity. We were clear-eyed about it. We know all the challenges within this area because we've studied it over and over again. The other thing that our project does is that it also improves access to the Port of Cleveland, which I'm showing you a lot of things that are layered on top of each other on our lakefront. And with this planning study, we can also look at how to make that connection more efficient and work better, make sure that we are treating our lakefront to serve all of the various needs, and making sure that each one gets its own attention and proper attention, and really going after these funds, right time, right place, right project. And we're thrilled to get going on our studies.
That's great. And it's interesting to really hear about how this is one part of a much bigger project. And so encouraging cities to think about where are sort of your funding gaps, your discrete pieces of a project, and could those be eligible activities for build, and how could a planning grant help you get started? Not but last least, I'm going to head over to closer to home to Waterbury, Connecticut. And just have a question for you, for Sal, and for Lynn. If you could tell us a little bit about your project in 2022. We know Waterbury received a $23 million build grant. Can you tell us how you guys putting that money to work, and what's the current status of the project?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having us. We're excited to talk about our project. It is a build project, started what was formerly RAISE. It is called, and I have to make sure I don't mess up and give you an acronym. The project is the Waterbury Active Transportation Economic Resurgence Phase 2 project. For short, we refer to it as the Water 2 project. So we're continuing on what was actually started during the Tiger era. And this it involves a number of things right now for what got awarded for the 23.1 million. It includes engineering, rights of way, and construction for 3 different components. One component is the extension of our trail, which is and what was referred to as our Greenway project during the Tiger era. That's an approximately 2 million mile multi-use trail to encourage pedestrian and bicyclists with safe passage. We start that project where we left off in a recent additional trail project. So we're trying to leverage money from different sources and continue each piece of this. So we continue on where we just finished a recent trail project, and we connect with our component 2. Component 2 is our West Main Street renovation and streetscaping project. So that's an area of town that is heavily traveled, and it includes basically our town green. So there's a lot of community activity there. Certainly families, children, school age. It's a good hub, and it abuts different churches. There's different businesses in the area, and it's an area that is recognized in the state as being very prone to accidents. So we're trying to do something to improve that. There's irregularly shaped lanes, just many things that needed to be looked at. So what we're doing is through a combination of extending the bicyclists and pedestrian areas. We're also improving the bus lanes and turnoffs in that area and including shared use paths throughout. We're hoping that in doing that all around the green area, that things are a little more uniform, a little safer in traveling, not only for the vehicles, but for the pedestrians and cyclists that need to use that area. And then the third component is the smallest of our components. It's the institution of 2 EV charging stations that are being constructed in our recently improved train station. And in that train station, they've also are housing an area for buses to take advantage of the parking area there. So we're trying to make an area that is cohesive throughout, that involves pedestrians and cyclists and the bike folks that are using the buses and train, and hope that at the end of the day there's more connectivity throughout that whole area, and this all involves a much safer way to do business. Where we are right now, we're in the midst of the final design and the right-of-way process for all 3 of the components. And we are scheduled to commence with going out for bid later this summer. And the intent is to complete construction in November of 2028 for component 2 and 3, and June of 2029 for our component 1. So that's the game plan right now. I know Sal had some work on the application, so he may have some insight there.
Yes, I don't know if you want to talk about that when you talk towards the end of the outline about the tips, things I would recommend, but as Lynn said, this is a multimodal project. There's many components, many moving parts. It dovetails with current ongoing projects. The city and DOT has some quote unquote early action items related to the Interstate 84. The city is doing massive utility improvements in the downtown, the green area. Once those are done, we will, be working on the West Main improvements. Again, West Main is streetscape and pedestrian safety enhancements, high visibility, pedestrian activated signals, bumped out crosswalks, elevated crosswalks. Focus there is really on pedestrian safety. The Greenway is actually part of a regional project that runs, it's part of the 44-mile Naugatuck River Greenway. This will be our second component of the trail, and ideally it will connect the entire river valley, the communities, provide an alternative to alternative transportation options for bicyclists and residents. West Main and South Main, are very, it's an older city. The roads are very tight. It's high traffic. So we're trying to address the pedestrian safety issues there. In both instances, component 1 and component 2.
It's so great to hear about the project and the myriad components. We'll definitely dig into a few of those more. I'm going to come back to you, Mayor Arsenault. I think you talked about that you're in the design phase now, and the construction phase is intended to start in 2027. You were awarded the grant in 2022. Just wondering, how do you keep residents engaged and apprised of the work that's happening from grants, from winning the grant and the grant award announcement through to what's a long process from a construction phase?
I think number one, we mention it a lot whenever we're talking about accomplishments and things for the future. In this particular case, our stakeholders are pretty much intimately involved with us on a regular basis. I deal with BRF and with Willis-Knighton, which is a private hospital system, which is on the west end of this 1.6 miles. And we stay in touch with LSU Oxnard and LSU Health, both for the clinic and for the hospital and the medical school. So we're a 175,000 person city, so we're the stakeholders stay pretty much abreast of it. The general public probably not as much, but I do mention it in my state of the city, and it updates for people so that people know that this is coming. I wish we were turning dirt in 2026. It's an election year, so that would be very nice. But it appears we're going to do that in 2027. So I'll look forward to that in my second term.
That's great. And yeah, it's I know one of the priorities that Christopher mentioned, and we've heard from the folks at DOT, including from Secretary Duffy, is that realization, the project realization, and really focusing on making sure that whatever projects that they're funding are actually going to be delivered in a efficient way. And so being able to show those milestones that you're hitting as you go through the process, including in the design, it's like you're releasing the designs, you're showing people, maybe it's even putting up physical, signs. This is what's coming here, right? So that you keep
Right.
people informed along the way. Katie, I know that you guys want a planning grant, and that's harder to kind of like help people feel like there's movement happening because it's not an implementation grant. It's not to do construction. How are you all, and how's Mayor Bibb communicating to the public about the importance of the work that's happening, even if it's behind the scenes?
So we have, excuse me, we have set up almost we set up a additional nonprofit called the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation, who is working for the city, with the city, to demonstrate all the amazing things that are possible with our lakefront. Standing up that organization has made a huge difference in kind of the city's ability to be present in conversations about transforming the lakefront, because that's the sole goal of that organization, is to revitalize and bring people out to our coast and help them see all that is possible on the coast of Cleveland. So that was probably one of the most impactful things that the city did in order to ensure that we can continue to be right there with our constituents, make sure that we can answer their questions, make sure that we have renderings on a website, make sure that we are staying ahead of them for questions, so that we are being much more responsive than the city could be on our own. And it was very intentional because there's a lot that goes on in a city of this size, and we don't want to be all these other priorities to be competing when someone wants to come and speak to us about our lakefront. So that's one way. Another way is we make ourselves available to talk with partners about opportunities to come together to see how their projects align with ours, and we participate wherever we can. We really do a very concerted effort to meet people and go places where conversations are happening. We rarely make people come into City Hall to have those conversations with us. We have conversations outside the grocery store. We have conversations at our council member meetings where constituents are coming to talk about everything that affects their life that the city of Cleveland offers to them. So that we just try to keep ourselves relevant. But like I said, I can't say enough great things about the decision to have the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation formed and active for this project.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And maybe I'll ask the same question to Lynn and Sal. How are you all as the project gets underway? I think you said it was looking to be realized in 2028 and 2029, bringing people along in terms of how the developments within the project, especially in those areas that might be more prone to accidents, and people feel an anxiety to see progress happen quickly.
So one of the first things the city has done back from the Tiger era is there's a city website, and that website has been kept up to date through the years to identify each step of the way. Where are we in the process, and what is expected to be coming next? And as part of the process now that we're in with engineering and with the right of way, and particularly the NEPA process, we've had public hearings, and there has been an opportunity to engage with the public, and have our consultants to provide the detailed information about what they can expect. So they had the opportunity to provide their comments on what the intended design was, and it was good to get feedback from them for that. So that will continue. I know during each step of the way, as we are a municipality, through the public procurement process, that we need to advertise things. We need to go before our board of aldermen. And when that happens, there's again an opportunity for the public to communicate and voice their concerns, or support for the project. So we intend to just keep that process continuing.
If I could add, our project, the RAISE project, benefits from work that was done prior to the application. For West Main Street, our local council of governments and the Waterbridge Development Agency produced a study of a quarter study of West Main, and there was extensive public outreach, meeting with stakeholders. And that was eventually incorporated into the RAISE application. For the Greenway, it also benefits. We actually had design charrettes for that. We invited the public in. There's a video of it somewhere. But the people came in and gave comments. We met with many of the landowners prior to actually the application and the design being formalized. And we're carrying that process on now. I'm in the process of meeting with some of the landowners that are going to be impacted by this project. Some are the same from Tiger. There's a little overlap, so that kind of helps. But we're trying to actually have a more even personal approach to meet with all the individual resident or owners that are impacted in one way or another.
That's great. I'm gonna bring Christopher back into this conversation because I'm gonna ask you all the same question, which is really what advice would you give for either first-time applicants for build or for those who may have applied in the past for whether it was build or Tiger or Raise, and are not sure it's worth taking another bite at the apple because they know how competitive this program is. And maybe I'll do it in reverse order this time and start with you, Lynn and Sal.
Sure. I'll say one initial thing is if you are moving forward with an application, it certainly is helpful if you do have folks that have been involved in any kind of construction, if that's the type of project that you're doing. But certainly if you've had any exposure with some version, whether this was Tiger, Raise, or now Build, it's helpful to have folks involved in the application process that will actually be involved in the implementation process. Sometimes it gets missed, and I think we learned that lesson actually during our present project, is that folks who put the application together were not those that had that history or experience, and we could see that there were a few things missed that it would have been to our benefit if we had that opportunity. And certainly taking a look at the great guidance that's given in the NOFOs about, here's what everything needs to hit. You do need to make sure that you're checking all the boxes.
Such a great point, and building the right table as you're putting your application together. Sal, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I want to reiterate what Lynn said. It's essential that you get the people that will be carrying out the project to get their input right from the application, pre-application stage, right through, and work hand in hand with those people, with the people who are preparing the application. Also, I talk about leverage. Obviously, you're going to leverage your successful projects. In our case, we have the benefit, thanks to our team leader, Lynn. We have a team that's been between Tiger. We had a state DOT the Greenway project was state administered. And we have a demonstrated track record. So we have our team in place. I think that is a benefit if you could demonstrate that you have carried out these projects and you're familiar with Tiger Build process.
Yeah,
Success.
I'm so glad you mentioned that point. We say it to folks all the time. If you have been lucky enough to get an award project, making sure that you are a good fiscal steward, and that you're seen as a trustworthy investment is so important. Maybe I'll turn to you next, Chris. What advice would you give to folks who are either first time or maybe second, third time applicants?
Well, if this is your first time, sessions like this is important. Pick up the phone and ask a city or a county in your area who's gone through the process. There's nothing like literally sitting in someone's office and seeing all of the, let's say, bruised egos and understanding the local politics, both locally but federally. So that was number one. And one of the things I would say is definitely take a look back at all of the previous funded projects, because that gives you a really good indication of who you might be in the kind of same space to have a conversation with. So that's number one. And again, National Universities and Bloomberg has been doing a really good job of making those connections. The second thing, and I can do this now because I'm no longer fed. One of the things that that doesn't get discussed enough is that an applicant may come in and say, look, we are focused on a boulevard. We have had a high degree of deaths, and then they would end there. They would not talk about the economic competitiveness of the project. Well, have you done the work to tell us, like, is this going to improve your main street? Tell us the full story. And too often than not, given the process, how it works, we rank you based on each of the criteria, because that's what we have to do with statutory. So if you only come in on, let's say, the safety angle, and you do not talk about in a compelling way how it improves mobility and like, that actually puts you in a different bucket. And now oftentimes a staffer, like a political or career, says, like, this is a really good safety project. But remember, you're competing with thousands and thousands of others who answered all of the questions. So I just want to flag, while many projects are picked because they have a spectacular safety, it's harder to pick those out if the project hasn't addressed some of those other issues. Here's the next thing. It is okay not to swing for the fences. RAISE is definitely not the type of program where you are a mayor, you have this pet project, and maybe you've gotten no's from the state, maybe you've gotten no's from the NPO, maybe your private sector is not interested, and you're trying to swing for the fences to get maybe a miracle dollar. This is not the program. However, this is the program where you might want to take the first step. And going after a planning grant is actually much, much better. And to do that, I always recommend local governments, because I know it may feel out of place, but pick up the phone and call your division office, whether it's at Federal Highway or FTA locally, because they are right there. They're there to help you, and they can give you advice on how to apply for that planning grant. And one thing to know about the planning grants is that you can actually do some demonstration projects within it. So don't always swing to the fences. And the last thing I will note, and this is something I'm really excited about that the previous administration kept, we did hear a lot from applicants who just did not know where they were in the process. So for those who actually applied, and this is your third or fourth, here's what I would tell you. There's no one better in the business other than the US DOT grant office. When they send you a note after each of your rounds, they ask you to debrief. Those debriefs is by far the best cheat sheet about what you need to do the next round. Because I can tell you, when I get an application that has applied the previous year, the team will say, here are the things they did not include that we told them to include the previous year. We know, we see it. However, and then the team really wants you to get to your best self. Now, one of the things I will note that sometimes there have been communities who have applied a number of times and they're not sure. And here's some four things that you should know. Number one, do you have the right partners? I think Sal and others pointed out, we're looking to whether or not you can deliver this project. Project readiness is one of the key things that actually at the end for really good projects that will kick out them out of the process, because we don't believe you can either deliver it or you do not have the right partners at the table. And it doesn't just mean you have the state DOT or the transit agency. Do you have the local hospital that you are actually building the sidewalk near, right? You might need their permissions. Do you have a good workforce partner, because you may be in a smaller town? Have you actually engaged? So make sure you have the right partners at the list. This next thing, this doesn't get talked about enough. Congress, through the authorization of the program, has given localities more time to obligate. Technically, you have 4 years to obligate your funds. Do not take all 4 years. Do not tell the DOT you're going to take all 4 years, because we know that it's going to take you a longer time. So do not, if you have a project that's outside that 4-year window, you're not ready. Here's the other secret. We don't believe you're going to get it done in 6 months either, if you haven't done NEPA, if you haven't done all the other things. And so I think one of the biggest things is that be realistic about what you can truly deliver. And the last thing I will say here, or the last two, and I'll turn it back over to you, Jamie, is local funding. Is the local funding actually secured, or are you still waiting for city council? And this is a hard one, because sometimes you might have gotten a first green light from your city council, or maybe you've secured it through other partnerships. The department really will kick the tires and ask themselves, are these funds secured? Because that will speak not only to the project readiness, but your ability to deliver. And that, unfortunately, is one of the biggest barriers to actual grant agreements being signed. Because what we find out too often now is that a new mayor came in, or a new city council is flipped over. And unfortunately, the city council has different priorities. And so they're not ready to give up those dollars to support the local match. So to the extent that you can demonstrate either political support, local support, or even have already acquired those funds to do it. The last thing I'll point out is we did try to introduce a signal to project sponsors that we believe have met the standard, the congressional standard, and we want to apply. And actually, the current administration has maintained that, and it's called a project of merit. And so if you have received a designation that you're a project of merit, that means you actually have checked all the boxes. You've been rated high. You've been highly recommended. It's just, unfortunately, there's not enough money. And so in those situations, I highly recommend, has your congressman been made aware of this project? Has your mayor actually called and not only sent a letter of support, but actually made a phone call about this? I received a lot of letter of support, but I got very few people picking up the phone and saying, hey, Secretary, this project's really important. Come down and visit. Those extra elements are important because it's also humans. And so just as much you want to champion it locally, you want to make sure your congressional delegation is aware. And also, when you have that project of merit given to you, it is one that you can definitely give you some confidence to apply again. But again, first thing is first. If you've applied, listen to the career staff. They're going to give you the answers to the test.
And now we all see why Christopher Coase is the MVP of the local infrastructure hub. Thank you so much, Christopher. There's so much great information there, and so many points. And Katie, I know you did one of the things that Christopher talked about. You guys started small. You didn't hang from the fences. You went with the planning grant. Anything to add just about what advice you have for cities that might also be thinking about a planning grant?
Something that I always remember is Cleveland's the center of my universe, but it's not the center of everyone's universe. So when you're writing your grant and you're trying to describe the importance of your project, don't assume they know anything about where you are. They don't know anything about the benefits. They know anything about the history. You really have to make sure that you tell that complete story, complete your narrative, give clear evidence, point to things. We did a ton of links. I know the readers of the applications don't have to click your links, but it's better to put one in and have them not click it than not put one in and have someone go, what is that? So don't forget about all the things that you can do now that applications are digital and they're provided to the reviewers in a digital format. And then the last one is really sitting down with your grant team and going through the challenges you're trying to overcome and how you're responding to that, and use clear language and be sincere about it and be honest about it, because they'll know. They'll kick you right out. So those are things that we keep in mind for all of our grant applications. Thanks.
That's great. And Mayor Arsenault, I'm going to give you a different spin on the question because I know you weren't the one who was there when you guys applied. So maybe a different spin on the ball, which one of the things that we have been talking about is making sure you're being really thoughtful about project readiness. Costs have gone up a lot on these projects. How are you guys dealing with what you might have submitted for your budget in 2022 or 2021 when you were applying, and what the cost is actually going to be in 2027 when you start construction?
Yeah, I do rely on the designers, and I rely heavily on De Niro Washington to keep track of that because he's really the boots on the ground, and he gives me a periodic report to see, are we actually going to be able to do this? And I would think that it is something that we're able to do despite the increase in cost.
That's that's great. And I'll just say to all the folks who may have applied before, make sure you're really kicking the tires on that budget and thinking about what do these elements now cost? Is this budget that we prepared, a year or two ago still reasonable in light of that? Because that's the budget you're gonna have to live within. And so you really want to make sure you're being honest with yourself and you're not already putting yourself on a diet. I can, on behalf of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Results for America, who helped sponsor this event, just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined us to share what's happening in their cities. And then, I'll just say a special thanks to Christopher, who, has been a real superstar in this space. I'm going to also share, I've been putting some resources in the chat. If you pull up the slide deck, we have some technical assistance that's available. I know people were asking about cost benefits agreements, maybe people's least favorite part of these grant programs. We do have one-on-one assistance that continues to be available for folks who are working through those BCAs. We also have, you'll see on here, February 26th, we have a grant implementation workshop. That's a condensed version of our grant implementation bootcamp. If your city has won a grant, I really encourage you to send your finance folks, your project team to these to figure out how do you get the best bidder, the best pool of vendors to apply to actually be part of this. Sometimes, folks have a real challenge on the procurement end. What are all those reporting requirements so that you make sure you keep every dollar? I'm going to work myself backwards. If you're interested in water, the clean or the drinking water, again, a condensed workshop. It's going to put together the information. These are funds that we know will continue, or we assume will continue to be available in the near future. Safe Streets for All. There's another round of Safe Streets for All funding that's going to be coming out. We're running a boot camp. It started last week, but don't worry, we'll catch you right up. And so please do register for the Safe Streets boot camp. If you've applied for Safe Streets before and you haven't been successful, there's still especially planning money. Lots of planning money is still available for cities. So if you don't already have, a safety action plan in your community, this is the way to get one and to pay for that. And then tomorrow, we're going to be hosting a tech and innovation session, really that's going to unpack some of those Safe Street winners from the past, look at the technology that they embedded into their applications so you can be making sure that the projects that you're putting forward are really built for the streets of tomorrow. With that, I'll also just say for anyone who's coming to the U.S. Conference of Mayors winter meeting next week, please do attend our breakout session. That'll be taking place on Wednesday at the meeting, and look forward to seeing many of you there. We'll be sharing more about the wins that are happening, and we want to keep hearing from you all about the projects that you won, what's the status, and where can we keep helping you. So with that, I'm going to close us out for today. Huge thank you on behalf of all of our partners, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully tomorrow on the Tech and Innovation session. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.